Okay, so Paul, thank you for coming to Rock House Haven of Rest. If anyone wants to learn more, go to kolapahouse.com and you can schedule Paul here for a health seminar, a New Start seminar. So go ahead and tell us the story of this very special friend of yours. It was kind of like a sister to you.
Yes. When I was 11 years old, we moved into a new neighborhood, and kitty corner across the street was a girl my age named Paula. When we got into junior high, we actually went steady. But as we got into high school, we actually became more like brother and sister. We double dated. We went to the university together, and when we finished at the university, she went back up to Alaska, and I moved down to Arizona. When she got up to Alaska, she was trying to decide what she was going to do for her future. When we went to the university, we didn't graduate. We just went there for a year. And by the way, this is a picture of us when we were at a party for the University of Utah. And anyway, after she got up to Alaska, her parents said, well, listen, why don't you run for a beauty pageant, because you can get scholarship money to continue your education. Not that her family needed it, they were quite well to do. So she ran for Miss Alaska and she won. And this is a picture of Paula with her crown and the official state costume as Miss Alaska. Well, things started getting pretty exciting for Paula. She started doing some modeling and some fashion shows. And as Miss Alaska, a lot of doors opened up. And she opened up her own modeling agency. Her parents financed it. Don't go too far ahead of me. So she was hiring models, and then because of her family's political connections, she received a job offer to work in the White House in the United States Senate. And now she was among the most famous, this is one of her modeling shows here, but in the White House, go ahead, she was now among the most famous and powerful people of the world, and she would see them there at the White House, and things were becoming very interesting for Paula. She was experiencing all of this power and money and so on. And during all this time, of course, I'd become an Adventist. And after I was baptized, about 6 months later, I went back up to Alaska to share with my family and friends. And of course, I went right across the street to Paula's like I did since I was 11 years old. And I started sharing with her some Bible stories. And she was really interested. And she started coming to church with me. And this is Paula and I at the Adventist Church in Anchorage. The Adventist Church is on 7th and 8th Street, which is kind of funny, Seventh-day Adventist on 7th and 8th Street. So it was pretty easy to find. So Paula would come to church with me, and then she would have to go do some fashion shows in New York. And she would come back, and we'd be off to church again, and she'd continue studying the Bible with me, and then she would have to do some magazine ads in Los Angeles, and she'd go away. She said, keep praying for me. I would, and she'd come back, and we'd study some more. And she said, I got to go back to the White House. Well, when the White House is in session, I know she's going to be gone 8 or 10 months. So I moved down to Arizona, but I continued to pray for Paula. And then one day I got this little card, which I keep in my Bible. And it says, Dearest Paul, just a note to let you know that I'm happy and busy. I have accepted Christ as my Savior. I feel so good, safe and secure with God. Now this next statement is profound. I pray I will learn to love God and others as He wants me to. And I thought, wow, she's really got it. Because you see, there's only two things in this world that are important, God and people. Everything else is going to burn. Only God and people count. But when Paula turned about 30 years old, she started developing very serious complications from her diabetes. Her parents sent her to the best medical research centers around the country. Money was no problem. And every time she would go to another medical center, she would speak to the people who were dying, leukemia, cancer. She would pray with them. President Reagan found out what she was doing, and he sent her a letter from the White House to encourage her. That even though she was sick, she was reaching out to the people who were dying in the hospital. Well, at 33, she ended up at the University of Michigan Medical Center because they had developed some experimental surgeries to try to help people get their pancreas working. So they tried these surgeries on her, and it didn't work. And they said, Paula, there's no more medical science can do. You're going to die. She said, then let me speak to the people one last time. So they gathered together in a large room, the nurses, the doctors, patients, and they brought her in on a wheelchair. She was so weak now from all the surgeries, she could hardly stand. But she had the letter from President Reagan with her, and she was wearing her crown, Miss Alaska. And when they stopped the wheelchair, she held up the letter from the president, and she said, "This letter means nothing in my life without Jesus first." She put the letter down, and she removed her crown, Miss Alaska, and she said, "This crown means nothing to me either without Jesus." And she put the crown on the floor. Then she pointed out to the windows, and she said, "Outside there, they're all running around like there's no tomorrow, chasing after money, power, education, fashion. I know, I was one of them. I was out there, and I had all that I wanted, but that's not what's important. It's knowing Jesus. I'm going home now to die, and I will never see some of you again. But if you will accept Jesus as your Savior, I will see you again, in a place where there'll be no more doctors, no more hospitals." They turned her wheelchair around. They flew her back home to Alaska. They set up her bedroom to be as comfortable as possible. She didn't want to die in the hospital. Nurses were round the clock taking care of her. She now weighed less than 90 pounds. Most of her hair had fallen out. She was no longer the beautiful Miss Alaska that she once was. But she had a crown of life from Jesus that no beauty pageant could ever give her. Every day she would sit in her room and she would read her Bible. She would pray, especially for her mother. Paula was her only daughter, and this was going to be a very difficult goodbye, and she knew that. So she would pray that God would give her mother strength. Well, Paula was praying, and then finally, because of complications from the diabetes, she went completely blind. And she saw that as God's final blessing in her life. Now, how could going blind at the end be a blessing? Mom, could you please read the Bible for me? Yes, Paula, I'd be happy to. So every day, Paula's mom would come into the room because she couldn't read anymore. She would read the Bible to Paula. And page after page, chapter after chapter, she would read. And Paula would pray, "Dear God, touch my mother's heart. Give her strength. Help her to go through our final goodbye." And so, one Thursday morning, Paula breathed her last. And her mother held her one last time, and she cried, my baby, I have accepted Jesus as my Savior. And I will see you again in a place where there'll be no more hospitals, no more doctors, no more pain." And I made a promise in my heart that everywhere in the world I traveled, I would share Paula's story, trying to help people understand what Paula knew. That it's not the money, it's not the fashions, it's not the people you're around, it's knowing Jesus. And if Paula were here right now, that's exactly what she would tell you. It's knowing Jesus that's important. And I believe one day, in that resurrection morning, you're going to meet my sister Paula, and you can tell her she knows her story. Because she's not here, I'm going to tell that story for her until Jesus comes.
All right, thank you, Paul.